Okay, everybody. Hi, I'm Kathy Turner, and I just wanted to do a quick introduction of tonight's webinar before I kind of leave the scene in the capable hands of our moderator, Jenny Kinzer, who is assisted by Linda Willard. I wanted to let you know one thing that has happened. We had a question, and it was an excellent question from someone about why more people don't post all their clearances and why they don't post onto OFA and some other site the online data systems that give us DNA testing. Thought that was a really, really good question, but I didn't think it was in the wheelhouse of anybody here. So we're going to do an adjunct webinar on the 12th of July to address that whole question. And we have the Health and Genetics Committee coming on to talk about that, because there are so many new clearances, and you had to embark, advertising every 6 seconds at the AKC. So it was such a good question. We've decided to make it its own kind of thing. So to the people who asked about that, we are not ignoring you. We are giving it its own show. So with that, Jenny, I am letting you take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Kathy. As always, the Breeders Education Committee's work is amazing, and because of them, we're able to bring you guys webinars like you are joining us tonight, and most importantly, the people that have donated their time to be here. We have 3 amazing ladies joining us this evening, and also Linda Willard, my co-host. How are you, Linda?
I'm good, thanks.
Good. It's good to see you.
Thanks.
We've got a busy bunch of questions to get going here, and I'm ready to get started. So let's bring these ladies on. For those of you who don't know who we're talking about, let them appear and be noticed, because they are not only legends in their own genres in the breed, but they are very familiar faces, whether you are in the confirmation ring, you are in the field, or you're in the performance ring. These faces and kennel names are definitely in your pedigrees, and you know them. So thank you, ladies, for joining us.
You're welcome.
One of the things that I was prepped on in order to host this webinar was the amount of titles, years of experience, and just honorifics the 3 of you combined have. And it is just amazing. And like I said before, I know in my own pedigrees, I see a lot of your kennel names. So thank you so much. Maybe one of the first ones to say for breeding such amazing dogs that have helped me love the breed even more. So thank you very much for that. Well, are you guys ready to get started?
Sure.
All right. So one of the things that we really love to do here is to get to know you guys more. And one of the ways that we do that is to ask just a little bit of history about dogs in your past. And so one of the most favorite questions to ask is, what was one of the most consequential dogs that you bred or acquired? And basically, in a nutshell, how do you see that dog impacting your programs? And I'll let Edwina start with this one.
It's the most important dog for us was Aubrey. We bought her in 1978, a Splashdowns Emberain Aubrey. And if you look at any field pedigree in performance dogs, you have to go way back. You will find Aubrey's name. She was just phenomenal. We've had other dogs before that. We had similar lines, the Bonnie Brooks, the Tigato line, and we purchased a different line and it was not the same. And we went 3,000 miles and purchased Aubrey from the East Coast. She was out of Tigato's Kiowa.
Wow.
Too. And literally, and the pedigree, the field, she's there.
That's That's awesome. And just so a lot of people know, we tried to have Edwina on before. We did have some technical difficulties. So we are so glad that she is here with us now. So thank you. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it. Berna, what would you say is a dog that really, was important to you or that you acquired? I know in some of the little short interviews that we had Kathy do ahead of time, it was fun to listen to some background on that. But is there one you can share with us?
Absolutely. It had to be my Derby. I had the opportunity to purchase a True Bear son. And more importantly, really, was the fact that his mom, Champion Liver Lady Karaoke, who was winner's bitch at the National in 1977, I saw her for the first time when she was 7 weeks pregnant. And she literally glided across this big grassy yard to come to see me. And when I saw her move, I said, that's what I want. And I was so very, very lucky to get Derby, despite the fact that he flunked his temperament test twice. But, we went with it. And I think we can turn it over to Tonya from there.
You're up. You're at bat, Tonya. Tell us.
I'm at that. Well, I just happen to be lucky to have a Derby kid. And honestly, you asked me who the dogs are, and there's two dogs that will always be precious to me. And so it's hard to pick one. They would be both Kirby and Chaos. But without Kirby, I wouldn't have had Chaos. So I fell in love with Derby when he was 18 months old in a photo in the news, and I had to see him. I just had to see him. And I did the breeding with Haley at Derb, and Kirby came out, and he was the littlest guy in the litter, but he just had so many great things about him. And what he's done is history. I mean, he brought me out into the golden world, where Chaos brought me out into he had over 150 champion offspring. And I don't know what to say. I'm speechless, really.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like a mic drop when you say that. So 150 champion get, I mean, that's a real accomplishment and just speaks, volumes to him as well as your program. So that's awesome. So I do have another question, and I'll start with you, Tonya. We heard that you and Berna have a history. Can we hear about that? I mean,
well, this history, and I don't know if she remembers all of it. She remembers a good portion of it, but that picture I saw, and I won't ever forget. I remember looking at it in the news, and I'm like, I got to see this dog. I got to see this dog. And I knew he was back east. I got to see this dog, And do you remember the ad, Bernie? He was like 18 months old. And he wasn't
so.
even.
Was he moving? Was there a shot of him moving?
Yes. Yeah. He was a baby still. He was 18 months old.
Yeah.
And so we flew from Alaska. Tammy and I flew from Alaska to go to the Poughkeepsie National. We're in a Pinto, right? With Rebel and a crate that's broken down and suitcases. Now a Pinto. And I'm like, don't we need to go? I mean, there was a show, Marston Mills. That was that, or what's the name of it? There was a show there. And
Cape Cod Kennel Club.
Yeah. So we wanted to go to that show. And I'm like, don't you think we should get a hotel? Oh, no. You don't need a hotel. There's plenty of rooms all over the place. Piece of cake. Now we're talking the end of September, October. Think about that.
No.
That option. So we go all the way to where this show is. And I'm like really excited because Berna lives in Marston Mills, right? And I'm going to go see Derby. And so we get all the way over there, and it's late at night, it's dark, no hotel room. We go all the way back to Providence, no hotel rooms at the Holiday Inn. Now, this is before cell phones, so you couldn't call and make a reservation. You're going in and no vacancy. So we're in this Pinto, and we go in. By this time, it's midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. We go into the parking lot, park by this air conditioning unit. So it's running all night long, and we're sleeping in the Pinto with this big dog, a crate, and luggage all the way headed for the National, right? So this is not working. It's just not working. So it's about 4 o'clock in the morning. We get ourselves up after all night flying, drive over to where this dog show is, get in the parking lot, fall asleep, look like death warmed over, right? So we're sitting watching, and here's Derby. I'm so excited. I finally got to see Derby in person. And I met Berna, and I'm like, oh my God, this is Derby. She goes, here's Derby. And I'm like, oh my God, I get to see Derby, you know? And then from there, she grabs us and she goes, oh, you poor guys. Picks us up, and we go over to her house, spent the night at her house, had some great food, and it was just a great, wonderful experience. And that's how Berna and I met. But
I made you, remember I made you take a shower.
oh, I know. Oh, now that's why I don't remember. It was terrible. We looked horrid. Horrid.
So bad for you.
In a pinto of all things.
I know.
That's hilarious. And Rebel was one of your first Goldens, right, Tonya?
Yes, Rebel. He was probably, after we got married, he was probably the first one I bought. I fell in love with Tri-Valley's Doc Holliday when I was on a circuit in Eastern Washington. And the same thing there. It's like, I loved him. And he also was a True Bear son. And I asked Carol Kwame, I met her, and we asked for a puppy because she was doing a breeding, which was half Beckwith and out of a Doc Holliday. And that's how we ended up with Rebel. And he was like, I went down there, he was 4 weeks old. What the hell do I know? I put this little blue collar around him, and this is the puppy I want to keep because I was sure that's the one I wanted. That's the puppy I wanted. I knew nothing. I absolutely, how a person could pick a puppy at 4 weeks is beyond me.
Well, I mean,
But
you know,
Rebel.
when you do figure it out, that's another webinar we might have to do because that would be amazing. How to pick a puppy out. Right. Sign me up. I'll be there. All of you guys have bred amazing dogs. We talked about performance champions, conformation, field champions. I mean, I know even between Berna and Tonya, they have more than 173 champions amongst them. And, you know, that's incredible. But, you know, of all the dogs that you've had as performance champions, you know, why is that so important to have that all around dog in our breed? And I'll start with Berna with that one.
Well, because the majority of my dogs go to pet homes. I don't sell a lot of show dogs. You know, I keep what I want from my litters and show it myself. But I, you know, I would say 90% of them go as pets. So they have to be right for the breed. I mean, people want a golden because they can live with it, not, you know, it's not crazy, and they can train it to do just about anything they want, which was the, you know, true purpose of our breed. So I try to keep that in the forefront of my pedigrees. And although I'm not actively doing any performance work with my own dogs, they can do anything someone wants to do with them. All of my outstanding sires and dams have become outstanding sires and dams through the virtue of not only champions, but major titles in performance. And that's really something I strive for and I am proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. Edwina, what about I mean, as the person that's probably one of the heavier of the three in the performance sector, you know, why do you think that that's really important for our breed?
It's only as important as you want it to be. There's a small percentage of people who are truly into it. Of course, agility has made a great difference in really hunt tests. We don't do field trials anymore, as we might have mentioned before. They're just outrageous abilities that you have to, in time consuming and everything. But it's just I only have one litter a year, and I breed for myself and for my friends. So we are into performance events. I have an agility grand champion. My punch. Yeah, he was the sixth one. There's very few, but it takes a lot. And there's not a lot of people who are going to do all that kind of work. Master hunters.
Yeah. Yeah,
And,
absolutely. It's a lot of time,
Yes.
spent.
a lot of time.
And
But I
and
have
I-
just, you know, a certain amount of people who are willing to do that.
Mhm.
And then the
Absolutely.
rest, like you said, the whole litter doesn't go, oh, gee, I got my puppy. What do I do with the rest of them? Hunters, mainly hunters, they want that drive, and they make great pets.
Absolutely.
But you have to have a person willing to have that dog.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And Tonya, you know, you as well have, you have titles on both ends of a lot of your dogs and people who have your dogs. Why do you think that's important?
Well, I kind of agree with both of them and with Berna. It's like you like to have a beautiful dog too that can also be a good pet, and there's a lot of people that like to, they start getting involved. I mean, I got started involved in this whole game with obedience, like 90% of us, so you want the dogs to be able to do something too. There's so many great venues. I mean, I think it's really hard if you want to focus in one area, like the Master Hunter or your Agility Grand Champion, I mean, it's hard to branch out all over the place, and to do a bunch of different things. And so people find their niche and they want to try something new. I mean, so I like to see a variety of stuff, and they're brilliant dogs. I mean, they like to work. They don't necessarily always want to sit on the couch. I mean, it's great there, but they like to work too. And it gets their minds going.
Absolutely. And you've all kind of talked about kind of how you've gotten into some of to this breed as well. And that brings me kind of to one of our next questions that I know we've had a lot of people chime in on, and I'll stay with you, Tonya, on this. And it's about mentoring and how important mentors are in our breed. And if they are important, why do you think so many new people are seeking out people with just a few years of experience rather than 25 years of experience? Do you think it's because those like yourselves on this webinar, maybe we're not as welcoming as we should be, or maybe we're not as as approachable? But I mean, obviously, just some thoughts.
I'll give you my thoughts.
I bet you're glad I got that one first, huh? Wow. I mean, I think it works both ways. I mean, yeah, I mentor a lot of people, and there are also people that have gotten puppies from me. It's hard. It's help me out here, Berna.
Okay, I'll tell you.
I know it's kind of a fine line.
We're the same way.
I'll take this one. Here's the deal. I had great mentors, and they were from other breeds because I was involved in other breeds. And they were totally committed to their, let's call it, craft and the development of their pedigrees and their breeding programs. That was their life, and it has become my life. But it is a total commitment. And I think a lot of people, like Tonya, she makes showing dogs look really easy, really easy. And if you watch Westminster, the top handlers, it looks easy. People think they can just do that, and it isn't easy. It's a total commitment. I was helping a handler at some shows. She had a very naked dog, a Pierre Golden, and she told the owner, you got to get to work on this coat. You got to do weekly baths. And the owner said, once a week? It takes an hour. And so that's the kind of thing that people don't really understand, that we're constantly doing that sort of thing with the dogs that we're presenting. It means nothing to us. It's second nature to us. But you have to learn to make that commitment. And if you aren't able to do it, then you get frustrated. Then you go to a show, your dog doesn't look like the other dogs, and you're not winning. And you don't understand why, because, gee, you got this dog from Berna, Welch or Tonya Struble, it should just automatically win. But they're not understanding the commitment that takes.
So to kind of distill it all down, Yeah, no, I totally agree. And by the way, you know, when I ask somebody a question, I'm not trying to like really put them on the spot. Like this is your question. Okay.
Thanks,
So
Berna.
forgive me
Help
for that. But yeah, don't take anything personal. I'm just doing my job here. But I mean, but my question really is like, why do you think that they seek out a newer person than someone who's more established in the breed? That's kind of like and then the kind of the afterthought was, are people that are more established becoming not as welcoming or are more insulated because you have a lot of people you're mentoring and you're just not as, like I said, maybe approachable is the wrong word, but I mean, think about it at the nationals, how many new people versus established people are at a national specialty. And just like when Tonya was talking about her aha moment, you know, with Derby, I mean, a lot of people have those moments with the people on this webinar's dogs, and they're kind of afraid to approach you maybe a little bit about that.
They are afraid.
Yeah. And there's intimidation. And it's not because you're like giving them this look, okay, like don't stay away from me, or you have a t-shirt that says not right now. But I mean, so it's just something, it's something to consider. I think that's the main thing with the question. Yeah.
Another thing I do think though is that going to what you're saying, it's kind of like when I got my PBGV, I'm like, oh, Gavin would never sell me a dog. I'm me, you know? So you don't approach them, or you're afraid to approach them because you would never sell them a dog, or they think you can't, you know? The people you mentor, a lot of them are those that have gotten animals from you. And so they get from somebody else, and that other person may not have the same experience, or what their idea of a front assembly is not what your idea of a front assembly or what my idea of a front assembly is, but that they don't know any different and they don't know any better because they are. And I've been said I'm unapproachable. I mean, people try to talk to me at a national, and that's the worst place. You got all these dogs you brought and you're working 100 miles an hour, and it's like everybody's ping-ponging off of you. And it's really hard to sit down and have a conversation with someone in that venue. But I think people also, if they're afraid to ask you for a puppy, they go to person C or D and they get their puppy from that one. And that's where they're using as their mentor. And that person may not be a person that's had exuberant, 20, 30 years of experience. They've got 5.
Yeah, right.
And
Totally.
they're willing to chit chat with them because they're the ones that are not. And then at the same time, then it comes back on us, the whole full circle about winning and who's doing it. And, it's who knows who and all that. But I think it's because they're afraid to ask, just like I was afraid to ask Gavin for a PBGV.
Yeah. No, I think totally right. And I'm really glad that you chimed back in because I think that was an awesome answer to give, and it gave a lot of insight to some folks. And thank you for that.
Well, what about you in that kind of thing with field and performance?
You talking about me?
No, Edwina.
Oh, Edwina, right. Okay. Sorry.
The thing about, especially about agility, is they just run the dog they have. So whatever they had, wherever they bought it, that's what they run. And they don't particularly look for the best line of agility dog to run agility with. They just run the dog they have.
But do they come to you when they see your success and try to understand what it is that you're doing differently? Do they come to you for that?
No, they go to the expert. No, they go to the expert agility people.
Okay.
They get who happen to have border collies mostly, and are 40 years old and have long legs and can run. That's not me. That is not me.
Or me.
I have an agility champion because he's just an amazing dog. But we should, and he's pretty darn fast. It's just that I'm not.
What about in the field, Edwina? Do you think that people are less willing to work with newer people with field stuff? I know as someone who is more recently been involved in the last 5 years in field stuff, they always are happy to see me because they'll happy to have someone else throw birds or to pick up those bumpers that didn't get retrieved or whatever, or schlep some stuff around or whatever. But if you have that group, do you think that people are willing, especially like with WCs or even some junior hunter tests and stuff like that, that they're willing to do the training with them?
We are, and the local NorCal Golden Club has a great program now, and we're willing to take in our private golden group for the same reason. If you're willing to schlep something, sure, come on over, and we'll teach you. And we have, but it's a lot of work and a lot of dirt and a lot of dust and a lot of wind and cold and people don't last. They have to really want to do it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Okay, I'm gonna say a slogan, and I wonder if you guys will know who this is. And I'll give you a hint. It's one of the three of you. Are you ready? Dream, believe, and achieve. And this is a slogan. If you don't know, that Tonya is Tonya's slogan and her belief. And could each of you talk about this, and why do you think it's important to believe in a young dog? And to kind of follow up with that, because I never like to give you one question, if you've noticed, give you a lot to think about in one setting. So does that work for people who don't really know how to assess their dog? And I guess you're looking at a dog that you feel has a lot of potential, but does that work for the people, like we said, maybe that haven't had a strong mentor or, are going to make you, their mentor? But basically going back to that dream, believe, and achieve, that slogan of Tonya. I'll let Tonya start this one out again, because I put her on the spot once already, so might as well go for second round, right?
Yeah, Suzanne and I talked about it. Suzanne and I were here. I think it's really what happened is that was a kind of it evolved, and it started in probably, we figure, 2009 when Chaos won the national, and the same year we took Vegas out to Yukonuba, and he went best bred by an exhibitor. And I mean, it's things that you just when you believe in a dog and you try really hard to do everything that you can to make the best out of them. That's what people don't understand. I mean, we take these dogs, like I'll go to the river and swim them up the current. I don't swim them in the lake. You throw the bumper up the current and keep lopping it. So they're treading water, and they're treading water strong enough that they are they're just treading water, and there's a lot that goes into it. But I think that was a year that when we talked about it, that so many great things happened that we achieved. And it's like you dream about them and you believe in the animals that you have, and you work that much harder to make it happen. And that's how the three words came together. But we both figure we can get them until about 2009.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And it applies to so many things, but it's so, it's got so much emotion and hard work in a statement like that when it does happen and you accomplish that, like some of the amazing wins that you've had with those two dogs, it's very overwhelming, and it kind of really embodies everything that you've been working for. It's really amazing. But when you apply that, when you see these young dogs, when you see a young Chaos, when you see a young Vegas, and you're like, even though you might have not had that slogan in, set yet, but what made you assess them and know that, wow, we can really get behind this dog. This dog's going to be special.
I mean, I think it has to be, and I would think Berna would say the same thing too. We know our lines, and we know how they develop, and we know what's going to change and what's not going to change. And it's like, I'm not out there to race and get a dog to finish its championship. I have a young dog now I want to finish from bred by, at specialties. And so instead of getting him out there and just showing him, I'm going to let him grow up and take the time and be patient with him. I don't have to have a dog finish as a puppy. It doesn't mean that much to me. You know, I have to have a goal. And if I don't have a goal or something to achieve, it makes it really hard. And in this particular dog, I think he's going to be a great dog, you know, but he's young right now. And so it's like I have to sit there and be patient. But I'm going to try to finish him from specialties and then go from there out of bred life.
That's
My
awesome.
goal.
Yeah. Edwina, when you're looking at your litters and you're looking at younger dogs, whether you're assessing to keep one for yourself or to put in a performance home or a field home, you know, what are you looking for and kind of what's your process?
Our litters they're bred to such a fine point that I believe you can take any puppy from that litter and do what you want to achieve with it. It's just a matter of of course, you have to do the work. You have to find the trainers. You have to put up the money and you have to have the luck and be willing to do it. But any puppy in the litter. I have a litter now. I got one girl, 6 boys. The girl's mine. I didn't pick her. She's going to be great. Her mom is not going to achieve what Punch did because of COVID, which, I mean, it's done in your shows. It did in our agility in California.
Yeah.
I've been in 2 weekends this year. I've run 2 agility weekends this year. So she's not going to be an agility grand champion. And she's a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe have another litter and she's going to go in the heat. It's just too much.
Mm-hmm.
So, but she has every ability to do that. And it's just what people can do. And let's face it, people go to work. It's hard. You're going to work all day. You're going to go train in the evening. Some do and some don't. And you have to have a good trainer, good trainers.
Yeah.
Would you address something that you said a moment ago, just for people out there that may not understand what you meant when you said that your litters are bred so much on point?
They're bred. We have I don't know how to explain it. We define them to the point where that they are what we want. And it's not like a show where you have to pick the body structure and it has to fit that. It's just, they all have that ability to do to get a master hunter, to be a master agility champion. They all have that ability to be no TCH. They all have that ability. It comes down to the training and the handler.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And Berna?
Yeah, Berna, chime in here.
Okay, wait a minute, what was the question?
The question basically is you have a dog that shows so much potential as a young dog, and when you're looking at that litter, what basically defines that dog that you can really get behind and believe, or even play the other side, when to quit, not to say like, oh man, this one we thought they had it, but they don't. I think that's almost an even just as important thing to realize, that
it is.
Need to pump the brakes.
Okay, I'm going to say one word: objectivity. We have to be objective about our dogs and what we're looking at, and acknowledge their strengths and their weaknesses, because they will have weaknesses. This is something that I think the newcomers have a really difficult time with, mostly, because they just haven't learned enough yet. If you can't be, and I know they love their dogs, and trust me, I love my dogs, but I can be objective about them and say, oh, that one's got a crappy head, or whatever it is. I can be objective. Fluffy isn't looking her best. So objectivity is the major thing I think people have to get into their heads that you got to evaluate them by the standard. You got to know the standard. And that's another problem that we have with our newcomers. They don't know the standard. They don't want to learn the standard, or maybe they do, but they don't understand what they're reading even. I think you can mold almost any dog into what the standard says, but still wouldn't make it a good golden.
Yeah.
I deal with very slow maturing pedigrees. And that is a problem for anyone who wants to get a show dog from me, because they bring it to a show and 6 to 9 puppy class, they're zooming around, they're fluffy, they're adorable, and they're standing there with one that's all legs and no hair. So, and they're thinking, yeah, I have a real bum. You know? But I know what that dog is going to look like when it's 2. So patience, 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 and objectivity. I'm growing on a young male right now. I'm very excited about him. I have to tell you, he was the ugliest puppy. Beautiful baby, beautiful baby. And then he went ugly. Wow. But I believed in him. And that's part of what experience helps you with. I believed in this dog. And now that he's through his uglies, I see the potential is truly there. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And thank you all for your answers. I know it's not a very defined question, but it was like that on purpose so we could experience your kind of thought process. And so thank you for that. As a lot of you guys know, the people on this webinar were chosen for their years of experience and their success in this breed. And with the years that all these ladies have in breeding and the number of champions being produced being a criteria. I'll start with you, Berna. Do you think that's the right criteria? What about outstanding sires and dams, and how important are they?
Well, for me, outstanding sires and dams are that's the ultimate title, because that proves that my dog can produce as good as he is or she is, and carry the pedigree through. It's very important to me. If, I don't really count champions or any of that. It's not that important. The numbers, it's the quality. Quality is way more important than quantity. And I think that if you can continually produce quality, and those dogs can produce quality, that's a breeding program. And that's what I hope people will strive for.
Yeah. Tonya, what are your thoughts?
No, I do agree with that. I guess sometimes I think that, I guess I don't really look at the outstanding sires and outstanding dams that much when I decide to do, but I also anymore, I think it's so easy for them to come. If you have a good breeding program, it's so easy for it to come. I wish it was a little more complicated or a little more difficult. It's just, they have ROMs, ROMXs. So those X's to me would be the ones that would be really the outstanding producers. I think when you have a whole pedigree full of outstanding sires and outstanding dams, is it that easy? Or are we just lucky? So I guess I agree with Berna in that I think it's important, but I think it's too easy to become that way.
Gotcha.
That's my feeling.
Yeah. Edwina, what do you think?
Yes, I like to make fine outstanding sires and dams. I like to do that. A friend of mine showed up with a hunting dog one day. He called me on the phone and he said, I have this magnificent dog. I know you hear this all the time. And you don't want to hear it again, but he's magnificent. And I said, okay, bring him by. He walked in and I let him go in the yard. And I said, this dog is magnificent. You guys would think he's a little too tall and very, very, very red, but his movement, he would go around the trees he was just fabulous. And he's this guy's hunting dog. And I've known this guy for 30 years. Mm-hmm. And I made this dog, Murphy, an outstanding sire. He is a junior hunter. He has a WC, and he's an outstanding sire. And that's the only titles he has. He's magnificent producer, and he produced wonderfully. It's a great background. Great background. Of course, he has all the clearances, but we know that. But it's the dog that it's not the titles.
Gotcha. And I'm gonna stay with you real quick, Edwina, and ask you this question. When you began your breeding, there's going to be more than one question, so you have to wait for it just a little here. But tell us what some of your goals were. Did they ever change over time, or did you determine the success in achieving them? If they came easier, and if so, who shaped your thinking about breeding and attaining those goals? If there was anybody in establishing that program?
Well, I guess we got our first dog, and he was just a first golden, and he was wonderful. He was out of old Bonnie Brooks lines, which you were going, who? Yes, it's way back there. And he was just so wonderful. He just wanted to have another one. And there wasn't any in California. We went to another line and from California, and it was fine. They're great pets, but they were not the original, that original line. The Bonnie Brooks was turned into Ticketo, which turned into all the field lines. Bonnie Brooks Elmer line. FCAFC Bonnie Brooks Elmer. And I forgot where I'm going with this. But anyway, we had them. We had some. It was just like everybody else. We just wanted another puppy.
Yeah.
And then as we trained and saw, we just progressed on and on and on. And it just took years to build and to go out and to go train and to go see what's good out there. Go to the national. Oh, this is lines. Torch Flynn, a legend.
Yeah.
She was just wonderful. Just so she wasn't my mentor or anything, but it was just someone to admire, and the way she could put the combinations of sires and dams together and create such wonderful dogs. So that's where I went, and that's the direction I went.
Yeah,
and it worked.
And what were the goals? Did you have some specific goals? I know we talked a little bit about having goals with dogs before, but when you started breeding, did you have a specific goal, or did it just kind of evolve as you saw the dogs that you were producing the goals?
Well, we ran in field trials. This was in the 70s, late 70s, 80s. And it was very difficult, but still difficult, but extremely difficult. Everything was black labs. And they won.
So you wanted to beat the black labs.
Well, I just wanted to compete in the field, which was very difficult. So we just found the correct lines to do this. No, I never had a field champion myself, but we have produced field champions. So it just, Ed went to work the usual amount like any other person, and I had children. It was not easy. Yeah. And to have a field dog then, and even now, it's 24/7 on the road.
Absolutely.
So
competition.
Yeah, we just delved in other things. I got a lot of obedience titles, and it just kept evolving. Yeah. Obedience became boring, and agility came along, and that was my thing. Ed retired, and then we went, oh, well, let's do Master Hunter. And so
that's fun, though.
No more field trial. It's just insane. Yeah. It's just too much.
Yeah, Berna, what about you? Did you see that you had goals on the front end, and they kind of, and you bred the dogs to achieve those goals, or did you feel like they kind of evolved?
as you know from my intro, I didn't even want a golden. It
Right.
was my husband who wanted the big, hairy, dumb dog.
We
That's
still
how
blame you.
that's how I
Sorry.
saw it. You know, I just saw, oh, God. But anyway, I, of course, fell in love. But because I was showing dogs actively, the other breeds, and working with
Schnauzers, right?
breeders. Yeah, working with breeders. Of course, I just wanted to, you know, have show golden. And so we just took it from there, basically.
Yeah.
But I had to develop my own, in my own mind, what I wanted in a golden. And most important, always for me, will be a correct outline with correct proportion and a certain way of moving with power and a great back.
Nice.
Those things are really important to me. I love a beautiful headpiece. I will let down on their heads a little bit, but I will never let down on their outline and their way of going.
Yeah. Tonya, do you have the, you know, when you got that first golden that you really started showing Rebel to the hundreds of dogs that you've seen accomplish great things in your line, has there been an evolving goal, or was there a specific goal with that first dog that you still hold true today?
On that first one, that first dog you got, you just wanted a champion, you know.
Yeah.
So the goals do change. I mean, and they change by as you've gotten the champions, and okay, well, I want more and I want more, you know. And I happened to be lucky and went to Canada, and Rebel did all this stuff as a puppy and got these best in shows as a puppy. And then it's like, well, I had a full sense of, you know, you would talk about it, be excited, and people would say, well, that's Canada. And he'd get these best in shows in Alaska, and the reaction is, yeah, well, that's Alaska. So you'd want to make it, when he got his first best in show in the US, that made it real. Even though he had numerous ones in Anchorage, it made it real because he did it in the United States. And then it's like, I love training. I love doing other stuff. And each dog is you do a little bit different with it, you know? I mean, now what I'd like to do is have that dog that is a best in show dog that can get the master hunter. But you can't, not every dog can get the master hunter and be beautiful enough to get the best in show. You know, you got to put, so that would be my next goal. You know, is it obtainable for me? I have to have help. I definitely can't do it on my own. And I have great help. You know, they're helping to pick the dogs out, and I'm picking them out, and we're trying to figure out who's going to be able to make it work. That would be my next goal. I mean, because it's not about number one. Number one is not, you know, so I'd have to say it changes over the time. Don't you agree, Berna? It's just everything you do changes.
Oh, yeah.
You're gonna have you have to have a purpose to do what you're doing.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So one of the questions, and this is kind of changing a little bit, and this is the tone here, and this is gonna be more specific on breeding. But Berna, I'll start with you. You know, you are all well known for having a family dog, and rather than, you know, just like a hodgepodge of something. But do you think that so many people today are really wanting to breed a winning dog rather than establishing a breeding program?
Yeah, I do. I think that it's, you know, they see what wins. They automatically think that that's good. It might not be. It might be big money, big advertising, and, you know, the right judges. It probably is a pretty good dog. I'm not going to say it's, you know, an awful dog, but is it right for them? They go and breed to that, and they take a lesser quality bitch with, you know, maybe a mishmash pedigree. They're not going to get that dog. So that's
the combinations you're saying.
Right. The combinations that they make, just because they bred to the top winner doesn't mean they're going to have a top winner. And I think that they end up, the younger breeders end up being very frustrated by that. So I think you have to establish, as I had to do, what it is you're looking for. And it might be a dog that isn't even a champion that you breed to. Championship is a piece of paper. It's a piece of paper. And it meant that we spent our money, we presented our dogs well, they were conditioned well, and we found judges that liked them. It doesn't mean that they will produce anything. So you have to find the dog that's right for your bitch. And I am not adverse at all to breeding to a non-champion. I'll do it. It doesn't bother me at all. I think I'll breed to a dog that is working on its championship, or an agility dog, or something, a performance animal that maybe never get in the show ring, but offers me what I'm looking for. So I do think that that's something that, people have to establish that for themselves and take the wins out of the equation.
Yeah. Edwina, thank you for that. Edwina, do you see the same thing in performance and field, and the same kind of drawn towards those dogs that have those higher level titles, or seem to have success, but maybe not the right dog or bitch for a program?
I guess I don't know how to answer that. I just know what I do, and there are people out there. There's always going to be larger breeders out there of field performance, mainly the field, and a lot of agility. People go to the field line to get dogs with a lot of drive to compete in agility at the higher levels. And there's just people who have lots of litters, and they breed lots of litters, and that's what they do. And they take a chance here, they take a chance. Some click, some don't. And I guess it's where they're sold, if they're sold to the right people.
Yeah.
But that's what they want to do. That's what they're going to do.
No, absolutely. It's a question that I think a lot of people think about. Is this dog just being bred or bred to because of a winning record in whatever discipline that they're performing in, or is it, instead of maybe saying, is this the right dog for my breeding program? So it's a difficult question to answer, because like we've mentioned before, some people don't have those mentors to help them or make those decisions. Absolutely. It's interesting to hear from you ladies, and I don't want to leave Tonya out either. So I'll get your thoughts on this.
Well, I got to go back to the question. But what is the question again? Because there was.
Yeah, we kind of talked. Sure. Yeah. No, it's you guys are known for having a family of dogs, established pedigrees and everything. And so why do you think so many people today are wanting to breed to a winning dog rather than an established breeding program? The two can be linked, don't get me wrong. But, you see a lot of people getting kind of more of a starstruck in their breeding programs than maybe finding, like what Berna said, the right dog, the right match.
Well, I think a lot of people also don't necessarily know how to put all those pedigrees together, and they do have, even if you have a nice bitch, if she is got lots of different stuff in her pedigree, and you breed it to something else that has no common denominator, what's going to come out of that? And even if you get something nice out of there, what are you going to do with the next generation? There are only a handful of people out there that their dogs produce what they are. And that's, if I'm going to go breed to something, I try to outcross. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work, but I think that's it's a hard question, because it's just a hard question. So.
It is. And there's no like specific answer. And you guys all passed, by the way, that question. But
it still goes back to people have to know structure. They have to know structure and movement. Yes. The bottom line is people struggle with what is good structure. Mm-hmm. And that's, what is a layback? How many people can ask you about a layback, or they say my dog's got a great front, and you go, oh, that's nice. And the same with the internet. People post stuff on the internet, a terrible picture, moving pictures that you go, oh my God, it looks like a German Shepherd. And everybody's going, oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's incorrect. So the internet has hurt this too, because people are thinking that this dog with this flying side gait is correct. And they don't even touch in the center. It's not correct.
Yeah.
So it's, sorry, I didn't mean to rampage, but I do think people don't know structure and movement.
No, don't worry. We're recording this so you can go back, and I'm just joking. But no, it's good. I mean, that's why we're here. And you know, and also like almost 150 other people. And it's not just us, because they want to know, they want to know what you have to say. And so this is the you know, the platform to do it. And I'm glad you guys we're having this conversation. It's a healthy conversation. And we're all here to better our breed. With that, I do have some more questions, of course. And it's about best breeding decisions. And I'll stay with you, Tonya, because you're hot right now. You know, I mean, we have a little like meter going. I'm just joking. We don't have that.
Sorry. I love
No, do not be sorry.
Sorry. That was my picture.
No, do not be sorry at all. It's great. But the best breeding decisions, are they made with the best and most complete information, do you think? I mean, are we able to get to a point where we can talk about the strengths and the flaws with our dogs honestly and transparently? You know, do you think that those are the best breedings are happening because of that transparency and that honesty, that we're talking about structure, so we have to understand that. But then there's this other side of things, and with having that complete information, and Berna kind of touched on that before. But, you know, in your decisions, you know, moving forward, whether it's, you know, depending on what road you're going down personally with your own dogs, or people asking for advice that you mentor, you know, do we think the best breeding decisions are being made because they have more information?
I think it's hard to get all the information. I mean, it's just hard to get all the information for so many reasons, you know. People don't know the information to give you, you know, or you ask specifically about a temperament or personality, and what you find out at the end of the day is different. And you can work with whatever it is you get. I mean, if we have a basis for what we can do, if we do something and it doesn't work, we can go, let them all go and start all over. But I mean, you can even outcross and bring in things you didn't even realize were there, you know, until you come back and you go, well, that didn't work, you know. So you try, but I think it's really hard, because you're trying to still put that picture, and you can ask someone about structure and they don't necessarily know what the structure is, or it's no different than that picture of the dog with the flying trot, you know. That's not correct. You know, you never mind the fact that if you can't see it, the front's not working and the back's not working because it's trying to get away from everything, you know? So I think because people haven't had the years of experience, and they can't be objective, as Berna said, themselves. I mean, that creates the problem, because you have to be able to say, this isn't going to work. Or you have to be able to say, I really do need to change that. And I think it's hard if you have everybody on the outside telling you, oh, that's a really good dog. That's a really good thing. Keep going, do this. You know, they're not being fair to them either by being honest. So people aren't learning. They're not learning about things because they're not getting the true information.
So, and I'm going to go to the other ladies here real quick, but what is one piece of advice you would give somebody in order to better their program? If I came to you and I said, listen, I really want your input, Tonya, I'm thinking about doing this breeding. What's one piece of advice you would give me?
You can't
Wow.
give one.
No,
There's no one answer.
I mean, there isn't, but on the other hand, if there's something,
I mean, you know, honestly, it depends upon the person. If it's somebody that wants to truly hear my opinion, that's one thing. But if it's somebody that doesn't want to hear my opinion, they want me to say what they want to hear, you can't, you can't teach them that. They don't know. No. And so if you say to someone, oh, you shouldn't breed to Molder because it's going to be a terrible breeding and this is going to happen. A, I shouldn't be saying that because I don't know. And it's all rumor and subjective. And B, that person's going to say to this person, oh, I shouldn't breed to this dog because Tonya said this. So I've learned really quick, I'm keeping my mouth quiet on unless it's somebody that I really trust and I know and that truly wants to hear what I really think. And isn't going to tell me
Absolutely.
run.
They won't just shut down after you say, don't breed to this dog. And
Yeah.
then they turn you off, but they'll hear why, because, you know, I've seen that combination and it doesn't work well, you know, or I've tried it myself and it didn't, you know, and you have the exact lines or whatever. But yeah, I mean, the only reason I asked that question and literally it's because the three of you have so much knowledge that this is kind of like somebody's breakthrough to listen to what you would say, you know, as far as, you know, that really wants to know. I mean,
well, I'm happy to give information about my dogs to somebody if they say, hey, what do you think about doing this? I'm a little more hesitant because it's bit me in the backside to say about if someone had a dog they got from me and they wanted to breed to an outcross or they want to do something different. We talk about what they're looking for. What are they going to want? What do they want to accomplish? And you go around that way. But if somebody from outside of my circle wants to ask about breeding to something outside of my circle, I just can't be involved because it's going to backfire on you. And I don't know all the ins and outs and what that combination is going to produce. I know what mine's going to produce. And even breeding to the stud dogs, I mean, the Kirby kids, there were times someone would say to me, well, I want to breed this dog to a Kirby son. And they'll ask me about each one. They all have their assets and their qualities. And maybe this is why I've backed off. And I'll suggest this particular dog for that person because I know about them and they're Kirby kids. And then someone else will say, well, you don't like this dog, dog C. Why don't you pick dog C? He's got a best in show. You can't, you can't come out with an answer that doesn't end up offending someone. So it makes it hard.
Fair enough. Absolutely. Fair enough. I totally see where you're coming from on that. And, you know, I appreciate your honesty and your, you know, you speaking freely about it because it's like a no-win situation in some of those situations. Absolutely.
And it's terrible. And it's dogs you like, but it's like people think you don't like them and you're the one who put the specialty wins on them, you know, but not every dog is right for every bitch.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Edwina, do you, I know, you know, you talked about breeding for yourself and having, you know, that one litter a year potentially and that kind of stuff. But do you think that the best breeding decisions are made with the best and most complete information as well that you can get?
Mine are. Other people, no. They're just usually just breed to the name or breed to their friend's dog. Like I said, that a lot of performance, mainly agility dogs, they're just running what they brought or what's available. It's so hard to get a puppy now.
Yeah.
It's turning the other way again, but they don't always just go to the best. They just go to what's convenient. They purchase what's convenient rather than necessarily go and find the best puppy.
Yeah.
And that's been going on for a long time in agility.
Yeah.
I know I said I was going to be quiet, but I have 2 questions I'm dying to ask. First, I wanted to hear what Berna says. When I was thinking about this, I guess when I was thinking about transparent things, you know, we've got ichthyosis, we've got uveal cysts, we've got a bunch of things that as a stud dog owner, one is hesitant to talk about this. I can remember when Cruiser was out, Bruce would say, you don't have to tell everything that's bad about him. You know, are we getting to the point where we are more honest and transparent about our dogs, or are we not?
You want to ask me?
I'm asking both of you and you're both shaking your heads.
No, we are not. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we've had some interesting findings lately. A couple dogs with PU, a couple dogs with SAS, not all my breeding, some of them, yeah. But, you know, I posted on Facebook about, you know, the disappointment that you feel when something like that happens. And that I rarely see anyone posting anything like that on Facebook. And I'm like, I don't care, you know, I'll tell you. Years ago, when we first started to diagnose SAS, that was a big secret. And nobody wanted to, oh, my dogs are fine. And that's, you know, they're fine. I'm not going to go and test them. I don't have that. And so the first SAS that occurred that I knew about in Pebwin pedigrees, I had not only bred this puppy, but I had bred both of its parents. So I had no one to blame but me. So I started to talk about it. And, you know, I've always had kind of a little bit of a sick sense of humor and say, well, I don't have anyone to blame but me. And and I was probably in our area the first one that, you know, kind of fessed up. And quietly behind the scenes, people would start to come to me and they'd say, you know, I had one too. Well, you know, it's not a dirty little secret. We didn't set out to create that problem. It happened. It's genetics. And, you know, just own up to it. Don't do the breeding again. Be careful how you take siblings, where you take them, and move on. You know, we're sorry that it happened, absolutely, but we did not create it. We created it as their breeders, but we didn't intentionally create this problem. So talk about it, people. Talk about it. It's the only way we're ever going to get anywhere.
That's kind of what I was, I guess, getting to, that we really do need to talk about this stuff a little bit more. But I understand how
it's difficult.
How it gets, but it also gets turned around and added to, and right. You know, we are a big game of telephone. Bill says we gossip because we have nothing better to do.
Yeah. Well, we have to start setting it aside and not taking it as a witch hunt in people's breeding programs, but taking it as knowledge and information to use to better our breeding programs, and having open discussions and being first and foremost, like another webinar that the Breeders Education Committee put on about PU. How many people benefited from that? I did a lot of research on PU personally, but I learned several things that I did not know about PU from that webinar. So, you know, it was very informative, but instead of just going, oh, can't breed to that dog because of this or that, you know, knowing what those conditions really are and what they mean for a dog's life, you know, lifetime, whether it's ichthyosis 2 or, God forbid, NCL, and things like that. We have to be better stewards of our breed.
And people have to stop saying negative things about people because they have a dog. A dog of mine just produced grade 4 SAS. I've never produced SAS before. And I didn't want to tell Bill for a while because it's such a, you know, grade 1, but you feel so bad. It takes a while. It takes a while for it to sink in. And he hasn't produced it anywhere else, and he's been bred a few times. So I don't know, but I would always tell anybody who wanted to breed him at this point that in this kind of a pedigree, this happened. It was a very tight line breeding, and there was probably a recessive gene both places. Other thing I want to ask the three of you, and Linda and I will be listening to your questions with your answers with bated breath. The Breeder Education Committee feels that the standard is not the backbone of what many people are doing. And I will speak for myself. I think it's not the backbone for a lot of younger people. I think grooming is more of a backbone for people who haven't been doing this a long time. And you guys have alluded to that. Two, you have to know the standard. You can't make good decisions unless you know the standard. If you were the breeder education committee, what would you be doing? What are the kinds of things you'd like to see us do to teach better, to make it seem more important, to make it so that the standard is what we're all talking about, and none of our dogs are going to be perfect. There is no perfect dog, but where people talk a little bit more about the standard. Berna, you said for you, what mattered to you. I am about, as Tonya knows from having me rant and rave, I'm about that back, and I'm about those right proportions, and I'm about the same when it stands there as when it moves. Mm-hmm. And so, again, I love a pretty head, but I give on a head for a great back and a proper proportion. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying I'm right, but that's me. How do we teach people about proportion and all those things so they make their own decisions? And they may say, you know, Kathy Turner really likes that 12 to 11. For me, it's the pretty head as described in the standard with the good underjaw and the eyes that can see over the bird that they're carrying, just so that everybody is making decisions according to the standard. Linda, would you like to add anything to what we talk about every single week?
No, I mean, you covered so much of it. I really think that we really have a job. And I think our Breeders Education Committee is taking extremely seriously. That's why we're interviewing people like Berna and Tonya and Edwina and all the people that came before who have been in this for a long time, who have learned, who have studied. And that was going to be what I would answer is, what do you tell somebody that comes to you that asks you what to do? And I say, study. Study, study, study. Study dogs, study the standard, study how people show. Yes, you got to know how to groom, but when I used to do grooming seminars and people would say, well, how do I change this? How do I groom this out? And I say, you don't groom it out. You got to breed a better dog. And that's what I would say. And I meant that. I mean, I think they thought it was a joke, but I really did mean it. But I really think it's so, so, so important to put in the time. And that's what all of these ladies have said today, whether it's performance, whether it's agility, whether it's, field, whether it's high competition in conformation, whether it's multiple national specialty winners, breeding a depth and a pedigree. It takes study. It takes time. It takes talking to people. And that's what I would say, if I was going to add to this, that's what I would say. And be transparent. You've got to tell the truth about your dogs. I mean, I'm in a hard place right now where I live. I have to drive 5 hours, to get an eye clearance or a heart clearance. I can get a hip clearance 2 hours away. But those kinds of things, it's hard for me to get those things. And I'm an established breeder. I've been doing this for a very, very long time. And I know how important they are. But sometimes my dogs I can't take a whole van load of dogs 5 hours away. And so things get a little out of date. But people really need to understand that those things matter to all of us who have been in the breed for a long, long time. It's important.
So I want the 1 minute answer from both of you. What would you concentrate on more, Berna, to get people to pay attention to the standard?
Well, let me go just say this about our standard. The word slightly appears in our standard 6 times. I believe slightly is extremely subjective. So my slightly might not be your slightly. It might not be Linda's or Edwina's or Tonya's. My slightly is, the proper proportion. But how we've stretched it to long and low is, well, it kind of is I don't understand that, but that's what we're dealing with now. So slightly in the standard kind of isn't a great word, I think. I think we could do better there. I do think do think slightly is a very subjective word, and perhaps we could do away with it, or find a better way of describing slightly. For me anyway. But yeah, you got to study. You have to study. You have to learn. You have to go to shows and watch. And it is unfortunate that it's so much of a grooming contest now. And I don't have that kind of hair usually, so it's not so much of a grooming contest for me. So I will seek out judges that appreciate correct coat. But we see so much of it, and my pet people can't deal with that. I don't want to breed that. So the standard doesn't call for that. So why do we have it? And why do we have bone that is so immense that you could no way call it moderate? Why do we have that? Because, somebody liked it, started to be rewarded, and it isn't even in the standard. So you got to study the standard and appreciate why this dog is in existence. If I do agree to work with someone for a show puppy, one of the things I insist on is that they go to hunt test, they go to a WC. Before we even get to a litter, I want them to go and see how these dogs have to be to do their job. They have to see what they were bred to do. Then you come back to me. If you've done that, that proves a lot to me. And then we can go forth. But I want people to protect purpose. It's really important. That's why we have this wonderful breed. It was bred for a purpose. And I really think that people overlook that because of the beauty contest aspect.
Anya, what would you do? You're the chair of the Judges Education Committee.
I would. Well, sorry. I don't really know how I would answer that. I mean, I don't. I don't think that I'm in a place that I would say that the standard is so subjective that it's what people are breeding is they can make the standard fit what they're breeding. And so I agree. I mean, I've had some dogs that have gotten to be a lot of dog, and then I'm trying to moderate it back out because it is moderate, So even within our own breeding, we have to, and our own things that we do, you have to go back to the standard in your mind and think moderate and think of those things. Proportion's really important because we are long and low, and you get them in grass and they're longer and lower. But it is subjective, and I think that's really hard. I mean, I guess I hadn't counted the number of times slightly is in there though.
I did.
But I mean, I took a dog in one time, and because I had to ask. It was not a dog I bred, but I had to ask Colette because they wanted to know, well, what did you think about that dog? And she looked at me and she goes, "There's nothing moderate about that dog." Well, the owner asked me to ask, and I did, and I knew I could do it with her. And he wasn't. He had way too much bone, I mean, he had trunk legs and stuff, and it's like even I can see that. But I mean, and he clearly isn't moderate. And I mean, I've had some bigger dogs that they can still do their job. They can still go out there and bring bit birds, and they can still do agility. Now, do I do agility anymore with them? An 80-pound dog? I don't. Chaos got hurt coming off an A-frame, and so I'm more skeptical about doing it now. But I mean, the standard is just subjective. But who are we to change it? I mean, who are we to change it? It's been there a long time.
I think that I heard Donald say one time that the thing about our standard is it's so broad. And I think that's what you're saying, Tonya, that there's much that can fit in it. So for me, a 12 to 11 dog can be short. He can be 22 inches. He can be 24 inches, but as long as he's proportionate. And I use 12 to 11, Berna, because slightly longer than tall is a difficult thing.
Yes.
And Edwina, you're the
Yes.
only one who's doing this right. You are saving our dogs.
The true performance people basically don't care about the standard. They breed for performance, and the performance is how they move in the performance venue. Can they just turn their body around a stanchion with a wing and go the other way? Yes, I threw a 72-pound dog through this and did it. But he could turn on a dime, and that's what we're looking for. Sure, we like to go get CCAs, and they do score pretty well on it, but it's not the same as the show ring by any means, as you all know.
Mhm.
I don't know what to say, but they're going to buy a puppy. They're not even looking at. Sure, they want a cute, pretty one, and that's about it. Sometimes they don't care, especially in the master hunters. They don't care what they look like, as long as they perform.
Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt, Jenny, but I think our time is almost gone. I'm sorry I took so much of it, but I really wanted to hear, because we struggle with this. And as Linda said, that's why we are doing these webinars. We want to talk to as many people as we can and learn as much, and have people who watch and the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who watch on Zoom once we post them.
Right.
It's a huge number of people who end up watching these. So I appreciated all your comments about the standard. And Jenny,
May I just say one thing?
you may say as much as you'd like.
Oh, good. Don't turn me off yet. This is this is for Edwina. I want you to know that I'm a CCA evaluator, and two of the finest dogs I ever put my hands on were field champions. They were so good and so true to our standard that I mean, you can't give anyone a perfect score, but they were close. And I'll tell you who they were, Steeler and Speaker. And they were wonderful, wonderful examples of great golden retrievers.
I agree. There are a lot of dogs that have never thought about being in a conformation ring.
Yeah. And they should have been. But they had other things to do.
One or two.
Well, let's get behind those classes, that we have in conformation, those hunting retrievers, those star dogs who are very special, whether it's the national or specialties. And let's take a second look at that class in our breeding programs.
Absolutely.
There are 2 or 3 questions that we did not get to. May I just email them to you and get your answers so I can, we don't like to leave anybody with an unanswered question.
I think it went up to 4 now.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, thank you all.
You're welcome, and thank you for having us.
It was a joy to have
You were all fabulous. It was outstanding.
Great.
Thank you.
And as you guys always know, we really appreciate your time. And those of you watching, we do have these recorded, and the Breeders Education Committee will be publishing them. And so if you have more questions, this committee works so hard to get them answered. Don't hesitate to ask. Thank you all very much for being here.
Thank you.
And we really appreciate your time.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.